W21. Hello. So this are the last kind of 5 to 10 minutes of things that I think you should know about the arachnids and the euchelicerates. We left off with me encouraging you to love the ambiplegids, and we're going to continue by talking about the scorpions, which you should also love because they're amazingly adorable. Here's one on the wall of where I stay in Costa Rica eating an emergent termite, and then you can see it for scale, small and beautiful. So one of the cool things about the scorpions that I wanted to tell you about is about of the 2,500 species that exist that we've named. They differ in size and shape of the tail. We don't know why that is. That could potentially be associated with feeding, but it's a niche story that has yet to be elucidated. So they have their striking of that tail, which is thought about in literature and films all over the place, that it can be fast and swooping if it's defensive, just get out of my space, or that it can be slow and precise. And this particular study from a few years ago looked at, used video to track down whether or not that was occurring in kind of a C shape or a D shape, but the precision with which they can maneuver their abdomen was gorgeous. So please think of the scorpions. Also, please think of the opleones. Now, these are sometimes called harvestmen. The opleo is a word that means sheep master, and they're previously thought to be venomous. They're not. They're herbivores. They sometimes freak people out because of these large aggregations, which we don't really know why. It might be to avoid light. It might be to avoid being dehydrated. Collective defense by concentrating the small number of repugnatory glands that each individual opleones has on its own. The reason that I call them opleones and not call them harvestmen is because of the kind of the gender bias in that word, and because opleones is derived from the word sheep master, which is probably where they got their name from, because in the Mediterranean of France, the shepherds used stilts to maneuver around in wetlands where their sheep were being summered out on these very fertile areas. So that's actually, it has a root to why they're called that. So think about the opleones. Think also, we talked about the paratiformis already, but one shout ahead to the future is the fact that we're going to come back to our Demodex sampling and take a look at this particular branch. I talked about ticks and Lyme disease today, but we're going to talk next week about your Demodex sampling. And then finally, the free-living mites. This is potentially a polyphyletic group. It's an enormously diverse group, 40,000 species, with an apparent lack of tagmata. So no cephalothorax and abdomen, but just one gorgeous, just bulb of mite with its pairs of walking legs. This is from your dairy bush. One of the neat things, three neat stories about mites in the next 2 minutes. One of them is that they can be, as you can imagine with that size, dispersal limited. And how do they get around that? Well, some of them is that they get consumed by snails and moved along by snails. So snails and slugs could help mites colonize habitat patches that are scattered amongst harsh environments, where even a few centimeters of dried out soil can act as a barrier to something that's as small as this orbatid mite. Now, don't think the mite is tiny, but not without defenses. In fact, this chelicerate mite, Orbitabula tibulus, can store and release hydrogen cyanide. So it can poison things much bigger than itself. It blocks respiratory chains and prevents aerobic organisms from using oxygen. And they use these, they can store and then store them in an inactive and safe way and then release them against potential predators. Now, this is a note ahead to the fact that when we talk on Monday about some other of the arthropods, this appears to be an independently derived case of storing hydrogen cyanide. So the mite stores it in oil glands that avoid poisoning itself, but then if it's consumed or bothered by a predator, it moves this precursor compound into contact with some water, and then hydrogen cyanide, and then hopefully the release of the mite. And the last cool thing about the mite story, I guess there's four, incredibly diverse. They can be moved around by slugs and snails. They produce hydrogen cyanide, and they're really, really fast. And they can use their legs, some of them, to move. So this was a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago now, exceptional running and turning performance in a mite, published in the Journal of Experimental Biology, where they found that the Paratarsotomus macropalpus could move itself 323 body lengths per second. Now, if you think about Usain Bolt or some of the other world record holders in the 100 meters, a kind of a common measure of human speed, the fastest human can move at about just under 10 seconds for 100 meters. So that's the same body length. If they could move as quickly as the mite does, 323 body lengths per second, that average human, about 2 meters tall, could complete the 6,000 meter in 9.58 seconds. So this is much faster than we can move. Now, one of the other neat things that they talked about, the third first, is that they can withstand very, very hot temperatures, and that those fast speeds are associated with essentially a grappling hook right-hand turn, where they use little tarsi at the end of these legs to throw it and grab onto things and then rotate around them. And if you think back to how you used to run around as a child in playgrounds, this is an intuitively appealing thing. Maybe you still run around like that, but certainly our children love to run as fast as they can, grab onto something and swing around. Well, this mite can do it so this video is going to loop through and show you in real time, and then show you in that concentrated bit where that that arm is going out, and slow down to 1/30th of the speed. So in 5 minutes, well, 7 minutes, this was the things that I wanted to tell you about mites. So please, if you had historically thought about arachnids and thought, ooh, I hope that one of the things that we've done today is encourage you to think about them as beautiful, as providing preventive care, being some of the fastest, being some of the ones that can produce poisons that prevent them from being predated upon, and then being modeled after, named after shepherds in the south of France. So enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you Monday.